I got it. Oh. Okay, hello there to you viewers again. This is chapter 7 now. The title of this chapter is Pierre's Demon-Infested Wolf Pack. This is a booklet that's a 10-page booklet I just finished printing on Friday, 2 days ago. This is the title of the booklet, so I would like to explain how that title refers directly to a Bible passage about that the wolf in sheep's clothing there. So I'll read that in Matthew chapter 7 from verse 15, and it goes from 15 to 21, but I'll read a few anyway. Beware of false prophets or false Bible teachers, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. You shall know them by their fruits. Even so, every good tree brings good fruit, but a corrupt tree brings forth evil fruit. And then, therefore, this is verse 20, you shall know them by their fruits. Not everyone, I'll paraphrase this again, verse 21. Not everyone Baptist that says to me, Lord, Lord, or I'm saved, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will, or does the good works of my Father which is in heaven. I mean, if the Baptists had the respect just to read and study just that one verse, verse 7:21, that would help them to correct them on their man-made doctrines there. So this chapter refers a good portion of this about the manner that Pierre VII there, that lives in the Shedigamp area, that married formerly Heather Murphy. This chapter, part of it is to clarify how Pierre is a Bible imposter, and on the surface claims to teach the Bible, but in reality it's not the way. So I have here a DVD I had made a while back. I just got a hold of it last night, and I'd like to illustrate. I mean, I read that passage in Matthew 7 about a wolf in sheep's clothing, so I'll illustrate it now in picture form. This is the sheep's clothing, and this is inside, an illustration of inside the person when I'm talking to him about helping to restore the marriage. I've called him several times asking him to help as my wife's pastor. This person identifies himself as a pastor, Pastor Pierre VII. So I asked him as my wife's pastor if he'd help to restore our marriage, and his response to me was like this picture here inside it. I know parts of Pierre that other people don't know. Now, I'll proceed further with inside the booklet some. What I've come to realize, I'll clarify when I've been studying, and I mean, I started reading the Bible in 1982. 1982 to 2017, it It's about 35 years. So, I mean, I'm not boasting in that. I'm just saying I've been reading the Bible the last 35 years, but let's say the last 5 years. I've been studying more into cults, doing research into cults, and looking at Pierre Chesson's videos there on his. Pierre Chesson has a videos. I'll get back to that later in a few minutes. But what I've come to realize, I'll put this on so you can read. Oh yeah, I'm just going to put a date here. I've come to realize the satanic structure that Pierre is in, where it's like Satan at the top there, and then, oh yeah, I've got it, I'll show it to you as I read it here, as I explain it. I've come to recognize the satanic structure of authority that Pierre is involved in, his position in the pyramid structure, and then Pastor Hugh Morrison, his position in the structure, and then the supporters of these two church groups, their position and their part as pawns, like in the way of the illustration of a chess game, the church supporters are pawns. But I've come to recognize, I think this is fairly close. You viewers that know at all about the Bible, in Acts chapter 5 verse 32, it says, "And we are his witnesses, and so is the Holy Ghost that helps those that obey his word." When a Christian reads the Bible and tries to obey, the Holy Spirit helps that person. But when a person disregards the Bible or rebels against Bible principles, like I was explaining in chapter 6, it's demonic spirits that get to influence people that directly disregard and rebel and even work directly against Bible principles. In the situation, let's say, with our marriage now, with what I've done, with my newsletters, and I have booklets I've put out the last few years, booklets and newsletters, and now a website video to expose the corruption that was going on in these two Baptist groups. So by me doing this to expose the corruption in the two Baptist churches, rather than the Baptists appreciate what I was trying to explain to them, they were in error. They were disregarding Bible principles and that. And rather than recognize that I was trying to explain to them that they were drifting off Bible principles, and rather to recognize what I was trying to tell them and appreciate it more, they, as sedated Baptists and manipulated Baptists, turned against me and discredited me as a Christian, and saying my signs, I was mean, how a mean person I was with my literature and my road signs, and saying how much of a mean person I was, and some of them had detested, they had resentment against me, and then some had increased to detesting me, and some of them had just turned to hatred against some of them, I mean. So what these effects did, it was an open door to demon influence upon demons of rebellion, demons of deception, and demons of corruption would just influence these Baptists more, and they literally became this is the Pierre Church group in Shedicam, Christian Community Church of Shedicam, and the Margaree Valley Baptist Church, which is the pastor is Hugh Morrison. Over the last several years, like I just said, what their bad feelings against me was an open door for demonic influence upon them, which just increased as I was increasing in my publicity and exposing them. Their resentment against me just increased to the point where I mentioned in my earlier chapters, even last year, a death threat put on me last year, and this spring in last spring in 2017. Oh, that's right. The death threat was in 2016, but last year in the spring of 2017 was when they someone from I suspect it was the Baptist group in Shedicam, loosened those 5 wheel nuts on my van on the front, on the driver's side. And I mentioned earlier about Pastor Hugh was stealing my 2 road signs there. He'd have a decoy. One of them, he was the decoy, and another person stole my sign. But the second one, he used his own son as a decoy, and he stole the sign because they were leaning against my van. And when I noticed that Pastor Hugh took my sign, I started chasing him, and he ran across his lawn like a jackrabbit. So he's younger than me, and I couldn't catch him. I let him. He still got the sign. But this sort of activity was the result of these demonic influence on them. I think, and I'll tell you another result of a direct result of their deception and a direct result of their activity as a demon-infested pack of wolves that in sheep's clothing that'll go to church on the Margaree Valley on Sunday morning, or the one in Shedicam there Sunday. They'll go well dressed, go to church as sheep, church sheep. But inside of them, the picture of that wolf there is their attitude against our marriage, a marriage restoration effort. They've got that wolf look and that wolf grin against, and I'll show you evidence of that. I mailed these booklets, in the past 2 weeks in the Margaree Valley area. And some of these people are like, these people are strong supporters of the Margaree Valley Baptist Church cult. And I mailed them booklets to help to inform them and ask them to contact me in support of our marriage. And I'll tell you what some of these people did. Rather than read the booklet and keep in mind Bible principles like what I've read there, Titus chapter 2, sound doctrine. Rather than these Baptists read the material and consider Bible doctrine and call me to offer some help, say, I've read your booklet, what can I do to help? As a Christian, brother, what can I do to help to restore your marriage, Ken? And I would have said something. But rather than read the booklet and call me with a word of support to help, what these people, these envelopes, they just return to sender. They never even opened the booklet. I'll tell you who the people were. This is evidence of a demon-infested pack of wolves that just blatantly disregarded the Bible principles that I referred to in chapter 6 and the earlier chapters. I was referring to different Bible principles that the Baptists were disregarding. But this is evidence of it. Like I just said, rather than read my material and consider Bible principles, they just And I'll tell you who the people are. This is a Robert Hart. Robert Hart. Robert Hart from Margaret Valley Baptist Church. This is a couple here, Charles and Monica Ross. They live in the Big Interval Road. This is a Nathan McIsaac. Last summer he was driving big heavy equipment on top of the mountain, like a grader or something like that. He was giving me trouble last spring, in the spring of, he came to harass me there several times, and in early December there, one day he came to harass me and the RCMP came up in Margaret Valley. This fellow is a, I'll tell you what this fellow is. These two things go together. He came 3 or 4 times to harass me, this Nathan McIsaac. So this is Nathan, this is an illustration of a Nathan McIsaac personality on Sunday morning. And this would be inside the character of the Nathan McIsaac, inside of him. This is, so that's another one of them. And another one is a James Carmichael, or sometimes referred to as Jimmy Carmichael. Another one that goes to their church that just returned back, a Roby Fraser. Now, I'll mention a few more that I don't have their envelopes here, but there's another one that returned back there, there's a Luke Ross from Margery Center area, up in that West Big Interval Road, I believe, his address in the phone book. But he's an elder. Now, he's an elder in the Margaret Valley Baptist Church, a Luke Ross. Now, I had a talk with him last spring, in the spring of 2017. I spoke a few minutes. I explained to him just what on this video. I explained to him a few words, but he couldn't see what I was telling him at all. I talked to him about Pierre's poor attitude. No, he was agreeing with Pierre. He was agreeing with Pastor Hugh. This fellow, Luke, totally sedated and manipulated in what I've been, in chapter 6 there. I mean, this Luke Ross is totally, I mean, I'm disappointed to have to bring this out, but that Luke Ross, as an elder in the church, is totally sedated and manipulated in the manner I was explaining in chapter 6. And another person that's a strong supporter of it, a strong cult leader in the church. I met him way back in 1982. 35 years ago, I met this person. A sound person, a sound, good worker, a sound person on the one side, but a true cultist, a very sedated and manipulated cultist, strong cult. I have a lot of respect for this man. I've had nice talks with him in 35 years. But last fall, when I was there at with my road sign, the same person came up to me, a man that I knew well and had a lot of respect for. He walked up to me, this man, and he didn't say, "Hello, Ken," and "Could we have a talk, Ken?" Or, something like that. Can we have a talk to help this out? That's not what he said. He said, "I've been asked to come here to ask you to take your sign down. And if you don't take your sign down, I'm going to call the RCMP." And he said, "Are you going to take your sign down?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, I'm going to call the RCMP." And he did. He did call the RCMP. And they came over, they had a talk with me, and then they left. But that man's name is Elmer Hart from Marsh Brook. He used to sell the building supplies there in Marsh Brook. Now, not that long ago, up to about 2 years ago, I was having, this man had more respect to the situation, and about 2.5 years ago, what I referred to earlier there, I had called up Elmer, and I talked to Elmer on the phone, and I asked him on 2.5 years, it's about this 2.5 years, I asked him on the phone, I said, I was asking him for help in that to restore the marriage, and Elmer had a more positive attitude. He said, would you like me to call Honora? And I said, well, no. I said, Pierre is not supporting the marriage restoration now, and Pastor Hugh neither. I said, without their support, there's no point in you offering any help at this time. See, that was 2.5 years ago. But in the last 2 years since then, Elmer's turned sour. But I believe I know why. Elmer's wife, named Martha Hart, she's friends with my wife, Honora. She likes to, see my wife when my wife goes to their church. She likes to talk to my wife and that. And she's against our marriage and marriage restoration efforts. From the way I view it there, Martha's quite a bit against that. The last time a while back, I did go one Sunday morning at Margaret Valley Baptist Church. And Elmer Hart and Martha Hart were sitting right behind me. And after the service, I stood up and I turned around and I started talking to Elmer. And Martha was right there next to him. And when I started talking to Elmer, Martha nudged him away from me there. And I could tell, even the last few, I can tell Martha's against them. Martha's been influenced by demon spirits there that I mentioned earlier. I believe what it appears to me, I'll say it this way, what it appears to me that the resentment and the detestation of me and the idea of a marriage restoration, which Martha Hart knows very well that if Honora and I get back together, Martha Hart wouldn't have the same friendship and communication with Honora that she now has. Because before the separation, you see, we were going to the Pentecostal church in Sydney. We were not going to Margaret Valley. And Martha Hart wasn't seeing Honora that much. But since the separation, Honora's been going there much more. And Martha loves this. So any talk of a marriage restoration, Martha doesn't want to have anything to do with that. So it's looking pretty much to me like Martha influenced Elmer and turned him pretty much against any marriage restoration effort. And so this is bad. Elmer, if you happen to watch this video, I want to say something to you, Elmer, as a brother in the Lord. The attitude you've been having this past year, like last year when I made an effort to, last year you were totally against any help last year, and this year, no, we're in January now, so it's last year, yeah. I don't know if you realize, Elmer, but what you're doing to oppose a marriage restoration effort is directly against Bible scripture, and you're putting your wife's personal opinions above Bible doctrine, above God's teaching. Like you cannot gain any worthwhile benefits by disregarding Bible principles and taking your wife's opinion against our marriage in order to please your wife instead of the marriage, Elmer, this is going to work against you. So I hope you're able to make correction on that, Elmer. Let's see. There's a third person. There's a third person in the hardcore Baptist. Now, this person at least had the respect not to mail back the booklets. But this person, I did mail him several booklets and he never called me once. This is Nelson Ingram from Margaret Valley, a hardcore Baptist. Straight as an arrow for the Baptist. But I mailed several booklets and not a beep. I mean, he's a retired school teacher. I assume he has a modest amount of intelligence as a retired school teacher. I sent him several booklets, and some of them had a newsletter in them, and asking for him to call me back. And instead of calling me back, recognizing Bible principles, he's not acting like a responsible Christian. He's acting like a demon-infested Baptist wolf. I mean, I wish one of my last letters I asked him to talk to Pastor Hugh about helping with the marriage, and that I'd check up. On one of my last letters I sent to I assume you got it, Nelson, but I wrote in my letter, I'm asking you to call Pastor Hugh, put a good word in support of our marriage. And I said, if you don't do this, soon when this matter gets resolved, someone from the church and myself, we're going to go see you, or we'll see you at the church, and I'm going to ask you personally, why didn't you contact Pastor Hugh? So maybe you did, maybe you didn't, but I think I will be finding out soon when this gets resolved. I'm going to find out, Nelson, from you, if you called up Pastor Hugh to put a vote in for the marriage or not. I'll find that out. Now, another person that had some respect, I mailed him several newsletters, and he didn't mail them back to me, but last week he called me. He called me up last week. I think it was last week, the early part of last week. And he asked me on the phone not to send him any more newsletters. Strong supporter of the church, living in Margaret Center. We talked some on the phone. He was very sedated and manipulated in the manner that I've been saying in chapter 6. I couldn't reason with him whatsoever. He was following the identical pattern of what I was describing in chapter 6. And in this chapter, this person was coming through to me identical to the illustration and the path there, the path or of understanding I was explaining. But he was right. He was a real sedated, manipulated Baptist. This person's name is Tony McNeil from Margaret Center. Works with computers, but he has a modest amount of intelligence too. Talking to him, he seemed to have a modest intelligence. Goes to a Baptist church. He reads in the Bible. He's like the other Baptists. He can read in the Bible. He can read like Titus chapter 2, what I've explained, said that's sound doctrine, and it explains the wife supporting the husband. And I'll send him a newsletter or a booklet in the mail, and he'll totally disregard Bible principles like it was nothing. And he'll call me up, and he was saying that I had done mean things, and my signs and my letters and stuff, and how much of a mean person I was. he was very polite. Now I like that part. If you happen to watch this, Tony McNeil, I respect you calling me, and you were very polite on the phone. I like that. I respect that. I have respect for you, Tony, as a proper person, a responsible person. But the way you were coming at me, how a bad person I was with my material, my newsletters and my signs and stuff, it's just a little strange the way you would disregard the Bible principles to the extent totally discard Bible principles. The ones on marriage, you never mentioned that whatsoever, and just come back with the way I was behaving because I was exposing the corruption that was ongoing. I mean, that was too biased the way you were talking to me, Tony. So, let's see. There is a verse in Matthew. It's in the book of Matthew somewhere. With man it is not possible, but with God all things are possible. So I would like to paraphrase that again now, how that applies directly with this situation. That verse says, with man it is not possible, but with God all things are possible. So I'd like to, again, I'm repeating myself, but I'm going to paraphrase that phrase, how it directly applies to this situation, the last 5, 10, 15 years. That verse today, in what's said here, would go, with Baptist man, the como marriage restoration is not possible. But with God and with the Bible principles of with God and with his Bible principles and with Holy Spirit leading and help and guidance, it says all things are possible. In this case, that would mean this marriage restoration is possible. And I personally believe that the time is getting close to the marriage restoration. This is intensified, like one of my earlier there in the earlier chapter, it said the chess game battle intensifies. The chess game battle is intensifying now. The Baptists have a good position. They're still a strong, very strong, structured, rigid Baptist cult operation. They do have a lot of power and influence in this situation and upon Honora. As I mentioned, this is